going to do a drawing for one of the tote bags, maybe we can make that a condition that people have to comment here with any suggestions. And action. Welcome back to Show and Tell. I'm Billie. I am coming to you from my studio in New York City. And today my guest is Jennifer Lindsay of the Center for Knit and Crochet. So let me introduce you to Jennifer Lindsay, the president of the Center for Knit and Crochet. On their website, it has this to say about her. She's an independent curator, scholar, arts educator, and community advocate specializing in craft and contemporary textiles. She leads the initiative to develop the Center for Knit and Crochet as a digital entity, merging the interests, expertise, and collections of makers, scholars, and museum professionals. She holds an MA in the history of decorative arts from the Corcoran College of Art and Design in Washington, D.C. Her master's thesis, Mary Walker Phillips' Creative Knitting and the Cranbrook Experience, that she wrote in 2010, documents the emergence of knitting as contemporary art. Her past projects include the Smithsonian Community Reef, a display made with the work of more than 800 crocheters nationwide for the National Museum of Natural History's 2010 exhibition of the crochet coral reef. Sixth and Spring Books and Clarkson Potter published her original knitting designs and patterns in 2003 to 2007. So before we even get into your website and all the juicy things that are there, just tell me briefly about your knitting patterns.
Well, it's been a long time since I've had time to do original designing. It's something that I've always loved. I've been a knitter and maker of all types of textiles since I was a child. And in my post-college years, I began knitting voraciously. And I eventually got to the point where I wanted to make my own designs, and I started doing that and publishing them. It was a wonderful time in my life, and at some point I hope to go back to it, but I haven't done much designing since I went back to graduate school, where I studied a master's in the history of decorative art, specializing in textiles, and became involved in museum work and more specifically in launching the Center for Knit and Crochet with my fellow board members.
Okay, so what types of patterns? Are they garments? Are they hats?
Garments mostly.
Okay.
I'm still an avid knitter and a not so wonderful but eager crocheter. But I mostly designed garments, both for children and adults,
Great.
in a variety of techniques.
I will be looking out for them. Thank you. Okay, so this website of yours, you and I met a couple of years ago at Vogue Knitting Live in New York, and I picked up the card. I went home, I looked at the website, and I was like, I'm a little confused about what is here. So I wanted today to spend some time having you show me and my viewers what is on the website, how they can access the information. I know that they can also contribute to the body of work that's there, but
Correct.
let's start with some examples. Like, how would you describe the website to somebody who's brand new to it? What's available to them on your site?
So I would just say that the Center for Knit and Crochet is a very entrepreneurial and ambitious organization. We are involved in creating what will essentially be a digital museum for knitters and crocheters, one that they can use to find collections that are currently difficult to locate. These would be digital collections in museums and libraries. And also that the Center for Knit and Crochet believes it's critically important for the future of our crafts to collect information about makers and what they're making right now. This is the type of history that disappears overnight. When someone passes away, their doilies end up at thrift stores, and no one knows anything about who made them or the patterns that were used. And this is something that we at the Center for Knit and Crochet feel very passionately about. It can be corrected by us taking a certain amount of agency to preserve and share our own histories. And a great way to do that now is to do it digitally, because the newer generation is really just looking at digital media. So everything that we have, both physical objects and texts that embody our crafts, if they're not available digitally, they're disappearing so rapidly. So we are in part trying to connect makers, so you can do your own scholarship. We're really about democratizing access to both scholarly resources and encouraging people to take action to tell their own stories and preserve their own items.
Okay, so
Um,
I arrive at the website
mhm,
and you will give the link at the end of the presentation so people can
mhm,
go there, of course. I arrive at the website. Now I'm here. I don't know what I'm looking for, but you just said there are basically two things:
mhm,
museum collections that are
correct.
digitized and
Mhm,
things that individual knitters like myself may have contributed there. So
correct.
excuse me. So let's take a look at the website, and I don't even know how I would begin to approach it. Like, I know when I go to the Metropolitan Museum of Art's website, I can look for all the sweaters in their
Mhm.
collection. But what are some of the museum's collections that are represented on your site? Can you show us one?
I can do that. Let me see if I can share my screen and pop into some of the windows that I have open here. This is our homepage at centerforknitandcrochet.org. And you can see all the links here. Where you can find information about us. So if you're looking for our digital collections, and we have we have collections that you can access and add to. We have an online exhibition, and we hope to do more. We have programs and events for members and the public. And if I have time, I'll go through some of those things. But let's first look at the collections, because this is really one of the most innovative areas of what we're doing. So in there is an organization called the Digital Public Library of America, and they collect open source materials, collections, items, archival things from museums, archives, historic houses that share them in an open source collection through the Digital Public Library of America. And this is available to anybody to research and look at. So CKC is providing a gateway through Digital Public Library of America to items that you might want to know about that are related to knit and crochet. They come from lots of different organizations, from government organizations, state and local history organizations, and we have run a custom search on that, which we update periodically. And we basically point you to items in these collections all over the country related to knitting and crochet. So that is one collection. We call it the Library and Museums Collection, but it's really a gateway to collections all over the country of knitting and crochet. So I'm clicking on our digital repository right now, and it will open the window to show you the two collections that we currently have. So one is called the Library and Museums Collection, and one is called the Crowdsource Collection. So I think of this as obviously institutional collections, and this would be all of our closets and drawers, all of us makers. And you can look at and search these collections separately, but I'll show you one of the really powerful aspects of how we've set this up is when you click on Browse All, you can run a search in this collection and this collection. And it basically interleaves items from museum collections with all the things in our closets and drawers. So it gives us as makers a really powerful view of our craft history as a whole, not only what is publicly available or collected in museums, but what we all have. And the more that we can ask people to add to the crowdsourced collection, the bigger the universe of items in these two collections will be.
So as an example, if I'm
Mhm.
interested in lace gloves, I could
Mhm.
do a search for lace gloves in museum collections at the
Um,
same time as I'm searching
so
for
I
lace
just
gloves.
clicked browse all, and I'm just going to type in here if it will let me. Oh, I actually did a little search earlier. Cardigan.
Well, it's very general. You'll get a million things.
Well, it's a good one because it shows. So here I have 84 items that
Oh,
come up.
okay. It is a limited number then. It's not
So
thousands.
then I just ran a search for cardigan, which is a very general term. And you can see some pictures popping up. I know for a fact that these photographs represent cardigans that are currently in CKC's crowdsourced collection. But there are a lot of other cardigans and there are photographs, etc. These things all come from Digital Public Library of America, and we're sort of pointing to them so that you know that they're available, and they come from multiple different collections. So I'm popping on to the second page because I want to show you that one of the items that pops up
I was hoping you
is,
were going to show Beyonce in Dream Girls. That was on page one.
yes, her items are not um, knitted. So again, we're talking, or maybe part of it is machine knit. So again, we're talking about items where, this collection holds numerous items. We do not cull through it to make sure that everything is exactly as described. But we're just pointing you to a variety of sources. Some things in here will be machine knitted, so not necessarily hand knitted, but I'm pulling up Mr. Rogers' sweater right here. So this is an item that's in the Smithsonian Institution. And when you see it on our page, you will see the Digital Public Library of America's identifying number for this item, the title of it, the date, the description. All of this information comes through Digital Public Library of America. And then when you click on this item here, it will take you to the Smithsonian's website. So we are trying to forge a connection between people who are interested in knitting and crochet and the actual objects and the locations of those objects, making it really easy for you to go right back to the original place where the item is. A lot of times these organizations are only sharing a fraction of the collections that they have through Digital Public Library of America. So this basically opens the door for you to go straight to the Smithsonian's website through Digital Public Library of America. And from there, you can explore all of their collections related to knitting and crochet. So it's really powerful. And one of the things that I was so frustrated about as a graduate student is nothing like this was available to me then in 2010. I had, no way to find easily digital collections of knitting and crochet to even figure out where pieces made by the artist I was focusing on were located. That was a very difficult process. And these types of systems make it much easier, and they make the possibility of getting more scholarship in our field much easier for scholars and wannabe scholars.
So can you go back to the
Mhm.
previous CKC page
Yep.
and go back again to the whole list of things in this specific collection?
Hmm.
And can you scroll up? Because now I've already forgotten what this collection
So
is.
this is, I hit browse all.
No, go back a couple more pages. You're on page 3. If you go back to page 1, it probably says where the search was from.
It won't, because basically I selected the collections by hitting Browse All. I accessed this universe of objects and this universe of objects. I
So
blended them.
what I would really like to see is separately. I'd like to see what you have from museums separately from what you have from Aunt Sophie.
Okay, so
So,
that would just be clicking on library and museum collections. And then, is there something you want to search?
well, yeah, okay, let's just look at vintage lace gloves.
So these are going to be the items that
But how
come
do I
up.
know what collection that is from?
You're not going to know that from the way it's listed here. You're going to have to click on the item.
So I can never see a specific collection at a specific museum.
No, because all of this is coming from Digital Public Library of America. So
So it's a big
we
mashup.
it's a big mashup. Their system is a big mashup, and we've searched their system to make it easier for you to find, and there are many, many millions of objects, the things related to knitting and crochet. So, and then each record each record will tell you where it is coming from. So the source is the Digital Commonwealth. And when you click on the link, it will take you back to that place.
Okay, so can I find out if you have anything from a particular museum? Like, I know you don't have the Met, but I mean, is that a searchable thing? Um,
It's a little harder to search that way.
like Smithsonian, because you mentioned something was from the Smithsonian. Smithsonian, like maybe comma gloves, is it capable of doing that?
You can search in a variety of ways, and there is a way to set up a Boolean style search. But I usually just keep it simple.
Okay,
So this is query Smithsonian, all of these things
so
probably.
everything there is from the Smithsonian.
As far as I know, let me take a look. I mean, I might have to go into the Boolean search and say if it's possible the origins, but let's just look and see.
Because, all the while I'm trying to figure out, like, why would I use this? How can I use it?
Yep.
What's
So here
benefit
is
to me of using it?
here's a photograph of the Jansen Knitting Mills
Oh,
in
beautiful.
Portland, Oregon, 1900 to 1950.
Okay, see, to me, like, that's the kind of thing I would be looking for, because if I'm going to the Smithsonian, I might want to see this object.
Right. So there's a variety of ways that you can get into these collections. I really love them because they are everything related to knitting and crochet. These items are coming from, the National Archives. They're coming from all these types of different organizations that have different missions. And I think the beauty of seeing the items in the library and museum collections and the many sources that are contributing to them, it really shows you how vital knitting and crochet are to the fabric of our social life and history in the United States in a way that I don't think people appreciate in contemporary times. Like, knitting was so much a part of daily life. It was a part of industrial activity. It was a part of rehabilitative activity. And these archives, which are so diverse in subject matter, really acquaint you with topics related to knitting and crochet that stimulate a lot of curiosity. I mean, if you just go here and start looking at stuff, you're going to become fascinated by something you didn't even know you were interested in.
Well, what's interesting to me is you know, you have to have different hats on. I'm not a scholar. Maybe I'm a wannabe scholar, but if I were writing a book about uh, bathing suits and how they were made in a particular time period, then I would be able to find this, which might lead me to other things. And then I would have um, the ability to give a citation of where this is. People can
Yes, I
freely
mean, I
use
think,
these as long as they credit where it's from, right?
yes, each organization has some different types of rules and regulations about how the information is used. And you can always find that by visiting the original website and looking at the record for that object. It will tell you like what the rights are, how you can reuse it. So all that is available through just connecting with the original resource. And we really are just trying to point you to these resources as a public service in the way of encouraging people to do more research. And the materials here are, I consider them for research and enjoyment. So if you're interested in the history of knitting, for example, if you're interested in knitting bathing suits or crocheted bathing suits, you can search for those kinds of things in here and find out what's available. And I just feel like you never know who is going to be the next scholar. You never know what is going to inspire somebody to become interested in a certain subject matter. And the most critical service that we can provide to stimulate curiosity and interest and enjoyment in the history of these crafts is to provide the access, to make it easy for people to follow their interests and to learn and share more about this history. And that's really what this resource is all about.
Okay, so my audience, I believe, you never really know who's watching, but the thrust of my channel is vintage knitting, usually hand knitting. So
Mhm,
a lot of the people who have been guests on my show are people who are knitting from 1930s and 1940s patterns.
mhm.
So if they were coming to your website, I think that one of the things that they would put into the search bar in this scholarly section, in the collections, museum collections section,
Mhm.
would be perhaps where can they find pictures of things that were knit in that Art Deco time period, or where could they find patterns from that period? So I don't know what a good search term would be. 1930s sweaters?
I mean, there are patterns in this resource, but you do have to find them. I mean, it does require a little bit of patience to use this and some curiosity.
Well, that's why I invited you to come on, because I thought who better to walk us through the different permutations and combinations than the president.
So I'm just clicking on a random item.
Oh, like this
So
is
this is a
wonderful.
1980s US ski team sweater
Now, why did it give me
from the
1980s?
Plains to Peaks Collective.
Why did it
It's
give me 1980s when I asked for 1930s?
it could just be when it was added to the collection.
Oh,
So it's when it was added to their collection. Well, this is dated 1980s. I don't know, maybe it just didn't, it does require, it's not going to give you the exact.
right, I don't think that's from the 1930s, now that I'm looking at
It's
it.
not. So maybe I typed it
Oh,
wrong.
I saw you type it right. Uh,
So, you know,
all those Coogie Man sweaters, I doubt if they're from the 1930s.
no, they're not. But it may just be that it doesn't always recognize the terminology I'm using. You
Well,
do have to have a little patience.
let's look at Lakewood High School letter sweater, because that sounds maybe 1950s or earlier, maybe
1975.
1975. That's disappointing, because then it becomes like a search within the search. It's a little too meta.
Yeah, I'm using, I mean, you can click on, I'm not the best one to use Boolean logic. I don't typically do that,
What
but
if you put Art Deco sweaters as a, oh, does it have to be one word? Maybe two words throws it off. Ah,
let's try this.
well, now you might get other things. I would get sweaters in there.
Well, let's see what it comes up with. So here's Art Deco. I got
Actress
12
modeling
things.
a
Here's a
fur.
beaded bag.
Yeah, see, actress modeling a fur jacket. It has nothing to do with knitting.
1931 to,
Yeah, but not knitting.
let's see, maybe she's wearing a sweater. I mean, I will say these collections are eclectic. So
A knit hat. If we see the image, she's wearing a knit hat.
yeah,
So how do we see that? We click on that link, the identifier.
it should have
Oh, I love it.
fur neck wrap and two-tone knit hat. I've seen you in a
Two-tone knit
two-tone knit
hat.
hat. This looks like your hat.
Oh, I love what she's wearing. So yeah, okay. I mean, I personally want to see like, how can I use it? So now I'm starting to see, I love old photographs and it's fabulous that that's there. But now you have to go back to your site.
I think it does take some patience, some curiosity. You do have to get familiar with using it. But you can really find some very interesting
Gems.
information
Mm-hmm.
here and
Mm-hmm.
some real gems that might inspire you, whether you like to design, you might be interested in a certain topic. You might say to yourself, my grandmother has all these doilies. I wonder if I can find out more about them by searching this resource for doilies. And one of the things that I like to say too about the nexus of these two collections is when you start to see a lot of similar objects. So let's say we have maybe 3 baby sets now on our crowdsourced collection. And let me pop in there just for a minute. So this is
Can you stay with vintage even in your crowdsource? I'd like to see like what have other people knit that are vintage instead of the baby things. So could you stay with like 1930 sweater there? Because I bet people have uploaded stuff like that. And if not, they will now.
I have some things from that era. I just don't know if they're sweaters. So this has we have 111 items in here. This is from the 70s. I'll just run through. This is from 1951. This is one of the baby sets. There are some things that are from earlier times. So this
Oh,
is
there,
the
blue hand-knitted
20s.
ski sweater, 1920s to 30s.
Here's another dress, a crocheted dress from the 1930s.
Oh, this is magnificent.
So, and one of the things that I like to say is if you're only looking at one baby bonnet or baby set or one ski sweater, you can learn a lot from looking at that ski sweater. You can appreciate it, you can enjoy it, you can, see a certain, look or time period.
Excuse me, before you navigate away from this, is there information about this sweater? Who knit it?
Absolutely.
The
Actually, this
story?
sweater was donated to the Center for Knit and Crochet, and we don't usually take physical items, but in this case, we did because it came with all this documentation from the person who gave it to us. And we want to develop a program that shows people how to add items to the resource and what kinds of things would be useful to add. For example, if they have letters or documents or family photographs. And so we accepted this actual sweater so that we could bring it to workshops or show it online, when we're talking to people about how to add to the collection. And it says here, this sweater and accompanying documentation will be used for educational promotional purposes by the CKC to encourage others to add to this collection. So there are some items in here. There's the letter, the sweater.
That's the
And
kind of thing that I would be more interested in looking at. What have other people knit from that time period? That's like a specific, very niche thing, but I think my audience is with me on that. So you had mentioned before about patterns. Where can they find patterns?
so we don't, there are probably patterns in the library and museums collection. I've certainly found them there. Located in other collections. We don't have a lot of patterns, if any, in our collection, because there are copyright regulations about them, and we are trying to make sure that we don't display those kinds of things.
But now some of these are over 100 years old, so
Correct.
there is no
And
longer copyright protection, right?
well, I think it depends, and I'm certainly not a copyright expert. So, one of the things that we do try to say is we're hoping that people, when they're adding to the community collection, they will be adding their own things. So you have, your own rights to your photographs, etc. If you're adding other people's photographs, we ask that you get their permission to do that. And we are looking for people to add more objects like this, which really tell the history of our craft. And it's not surprising that the library and museums collection has fewer of these types of things, with fewer examples of the types of information that we would find valuable, because this collection is a collection we should be building for ourselves. It should represent the types of things that we want to see, that we want to know, that we think are important about the crafts. So one of the things that we did when we photographed the sweater is we took a picture of the inside of it. Now, it's very unlikely that a museum would flip a sweater inside out and show you how the stranded color work was done on the back. But that's something that lots of knitters would like to know. They would like to see. And the color work is somewhat unusual. The way it's distributed around the yoke, it's clearly an original handmade design. So,
And the little
and some of
reindeer.
it, if you can see here fairly closely, a lot of this appears to be duplicate stitch, because you can see those channels of blue separating out the red, and that's often the effect of duplicate stitch.
Well, there's also Armenian knitting, which gives that effect. If you make your float like one stitch long.
Oh, yes, that's right. If you're constantly switching the colors with every stitch. So, these are the types of things where if you have good photos of the items, people can really zoom in on these things, and they can learn a lot, and they can also contribute from their own knowledge of the craft, missing information. And, most museums are encouraging you to be more communicative with them. This is something that would be interesting to the audience to know as well. A lot of items that are in museum collections don't use knitting terminology. So one of the things that we want to do, we're also working on developing a nomenclature that we will make freely available. And we hope that this will help museum professionals use language that's more customary to knitters and crocheters, and that also by creating our own collection of our own things, we will enhance the knowledge about knitting and crochet so that it's not so hard for people to use correct
Can I
terminology.
just interject here? I saw
Mhm.
an exhibit at the Met a few years ago. It was a fabric dress with a knitted sleeve, but their little placard said that the sleeve was crocheted. So I reached out to the curator and said, I'm sorry to correct you, the great and mighty Metropolitan Museum of Art, but you are confused. You're used to seeing the stockinette stitch and thinking of that as knitting, but what you have here is not crochet, it's the garter stitch. And maybe you're just not familiar with what garter stitch looks like. And I sent them pictures of garter stitch and stockinette, that both of those are knitting. And they wrote back to me, they were like a little embarrassed when they were like, yes, you're right. And when we take that installation down, we will correct the, I mean, and that's the Met. That's the
Yes, this
Met.
is very common because think about who knows the most about craft. It's us, the people who do it. It's not museum professionals. So part of what CKC, and I am a museum professional, so I'm approaching this with a sense that the community that the Center for Knit and Crochet is serving is all the museum professionals who are interested in these crafts and custodians of these crafts, as well as all of us who make them and anyone who might be interested in learning about them. And I feel like if our organization can create the opportunity for these kinds of conversations to take place, such as you just described, then these materials will become much more accessible, much more accurately cataloged, and we will also do a better job of preserving the things that are important to us and sharing them with future generations. So museums are much more open, willing, and interested to have those types of conversations. And I think, I really encourage people who see those kinds of mistakes to speak up and try to have a productive, polite conversation about correcting those mistakes. And that was, in fact, one of the most inspiring aspects of developing a museum for knitting and crochet that our official founder, Karen Kendrick Cans, believed in when she first wanted to establish a knitting museum. It was her hope that we would establish a physical museum so that people could come and see the objects. But I felt, and the original symposium attendees who decided whether to build a physical or digital museum opted for the digital solution. And I think it's really helpful to be able to make these things available
Well, I
online.
think Wikipedia has shown us that people can put out very interesting information, and when
Yes,
others can access it and correct the record,
exactly.
well, that, the whole concept behind this crowdsourcing. So let's go back to the list and see, this is wonderful. And I'd like to see other examples from the same category. So if you go back one page, you have the list, right?
Yep. I wanted to quickly, here's one from the 1930s.
Oh,
There's a
look how
crochet.
sweet.
Yeah. And the color palette is so fascinating.
Oh, this is crocheted
Mm-hmm. With
and then
embroidery.
embroidery. Mm.
Yep. It's really wonderful. Woolen jumper dress.
I like the provenance contributed by somebody's granddaughter. Sweet.
Yeah. And so, this is the resource we really want to build. We're creating these resources for the community, the wider community of makers. We want this to be a place where you feel comfortable coming and uploading pictures of the things in your collection, sharing them with the people who care about them, which is other knitters and crocheters, and being able to tell your own story. A lot of times when you look at objects in museum collections, the maker isn't necessarily the name of the maker or their history isn't necessarily recorded. Sometimes it's only the history of the ownership, and we don't always know what the history of the maker is. And that, as we all know, each thing we make has a personal story associated with it, whether it's something that's being made for an event or for a person, or even, the domestic labor of making something over and over again. The stories of makers are not often told. And we feel like a resource like this allows us to correct that going forward
Well,
so
I
that people can
will,
really
I
tell their.
will tell, I will tell my Aunt Matilda's story. I have told it on my channel, but I will put a picture of the sequin dress that she knit at a very fine gauge. It's in my own personal collection.
That's awesome.
It's the most incredible piece of knitting. She was the most incredible knitter I've ever encountered. Her knitting looks like it came off of a machine, but I know for a fact that she hand knitted because I would watch her knitting.
Right.
Can you do a search for sequins? I want to see if you have anything else in your collection that has sequins.
I don't think we have anything in our collection with sequins, but I'll
Do
take.
you know every single thing that's in the collection?
Well, we don't have very many objects right now, and I do know them pretty well.
Oh, how many are in the crowdsourced
It's
collection then?
just a little over 100, so
Okay,
it's not a
so
lot.
clarion call,
Yeah.
people watching, go
Yes.
put
So
things
we really want people
there.
to add, and we've just gone through a process of developing a license for this collection, a new license for this collection that is actually better for our role as hosts. And that will be going live on October 1. So after October 1, we are going to be making a big institutional push to get people to add their things.
So
So
show me how I'm going to add Aunt Matilda's sequin dress.
you're going to click on contribute,
Good.
and then a menu will pop up. You do have to set up an account, and
Okay.
it will walk you through the process. You can then add your object and photos. So it kind of walks you through what you need to add. And then after you would put your information in, you will set up an account and you will have to agree to our terms and conditions and license in order to contribute. After you set up your account, you have access to your information forever and you can go in and add more things or even delete it. We hope you won't delete it, but you have control over it.
Now, what do you do if somebody comes to your site and they put something that's not knitting? They put some woodworking project.
So we do look at the items just to make sure that they are, you know, appropriate to publish. And so, we have to approve something that gets added. It's not just an open ad. We're not changing things or editing things, but it does have to be clicked to share publicly. So we do go in and click it and share it publicly. If somebody put woodworking in here, we would probably contact them and say, I'm sorry.
Good. Okay.
We don't accept woodworking. So.
Okay, well, I mean, for my purposes, it gives me a much better idea of what I could find on your site and how I might use it. And those were my overarching questions because I'd been to this site before and I was like, well, I'm not sure. I'm confused. There's a lot of drop down different tabs and I don't know what they're all about. But now you've really culled it down to just a couple of things. within the collection. I know there's other parts to the website, and we'll get to those in a second, but
Sure.
basically here it's library/museum collections and separately crowdsourced from the general public like me and
Correct.
others like me. And I will certainly come here and encourage my audience to come here and put their things, because yeah, it's a wonderful way of sharing. Of course, my program also is a wonderful way of sharing. If you have a collection, I
Right.
want you to come on my show and show your collection. But maybe I could encourage each of my guests to put something on your site. So
That would be awesome.
this is one part of it. This is just
Correct.
the museum and collections part. But
Correct.
separately, you have an exhibition, an
We do
online
have one
exhibition.
exhibition up, and we have several that we're planning on doing to add to the universe of what's available. But if you want to look at our current exhibition, I'll pull it up here in a second. It's called Sanker Gloves, A Living Scottish Tradition. It was co-curated by Angarad Thomas of the UK and Beth Brown Reinsel of the US. And it's worn really well. It's still a really great product, a great introduction to this knitting tradition. We feel very strongly that the exhibitions that we create should teach people about the history of whatever it is that is the subject of the exhibition, delve into the materials and techniques that are used, because that often isn't shared in museum collections because they may not know what those techniques are. So we definitely want people to know the history. Both Beth Brown Reinsel and Angarad Thomas are experts in doing this type of knitting. And so they have how-to information in here, what the features are, contemporary examples from historical and contemporary examples from museums. And it's just a really great overview of this type of knitting. And we hope to do more of these types of exhibitions in the future.
I took a look into each one of these images. There's a little bit of a description on each one, and I
Right.
found it completely fascinating. I only wish that there had been, like, at the end, this, pot of gold at the end of the rainbow with patterns. Like, I
Yes,
wanted
this
to
one
knit
we
one of
did
these right
not get
away.
a pattern, and people were a little frustrated by that. It was featured in Vogue Knitting, this exhibition, and Vogue Knitting did do an issue focused on Sanker knitting, and there are patterns in there
Ah,
that this exhibition inspired them to do that issue. And there are articles by the co-curators and some patterns in that issue. We also feel very strongly that we want to empower people to do their own research. So all of our exhibitions and collections, future collections, will have resources that will enable you to learn more, to follow your own curiosity. We think that's very important. There isn't enough scholarship in the field of knitting and crochet, and my experience with museums is that they rely on scholarship in order to build the exhibition. So even if they have knitting in their collection, if there isn't anyone on the staff who knows about it, or there isn't scholarship about that subject that they can rely on, they may not put the pieces out for display. So it's really important that we keep building the scholarship in our field so that it's there and accessible for museum professionals and others to learn about these crafts.
Now, you mentioned that there are upcoming exhibitions. Are you at liberty to share what the topics will be?
So I'm not at this point. I can tell you one of the things that we are doing that we're quite excited about is, let's see if I can pull this up.
How did you find this page that you're on right now? This
I had
specific
it
collection?
open earlier. It's not public yet. And I'm looking for my
But are there other
to this.
individual collections that you could?
There will be, and that's kind of what I wanted
Ah,
to talk to you about.
okay.
So one of the things that we are doing is we are going to be working with private collectors and historical houses and other types of small collections of knitting and crochet. They may be too small to participate in Digital Public Library of America. They don't have enough staff. They don't have, time. They are all volunteer. And we would like to be able to invite them to use the Center for Knit and Crochet to share these smaller groups of items. So we do have a few private collectors that we're working with. We're developing a process within the Center for Knit and Crochet where we can facilitate the sharing of private collections on our website, and we will have the ability for people to come and look at separate types of collections like you were talking about before. Wouldn't it be nice if you could just click on this link and it would take you to the museum collection? We will not be able to do that with the Digital Public Library of America, the gateway that we have. But as we add additional collections to our collections website, we will be able to do that. And one of our ideas that I hope we can realize within our next decade is to do outreach to local knitting and crochet guilds, invite them to share items that are important to their community and their guild. And then we could, for example, have a guild collection from a certain city or town, and it would allow them, every guild has members who have fabulous collections or someone who has 100 doilies or whatever. And nobody is sure what can happen with those pieces. And we would love to teach people how to photograph things, add them to our website, add the story and the history. And we hope that by doing that, we could create a greater appreciation within the community for that history, such that local historical societies in each community would be more willing to take those items into their collections. And some of the research would already have been done on those pieces by virtue of adding them to the CKC collection.
Fabulous. So I know you put together this slideshow, and there's a lot of information in here that we haven't seen yet. So why don't you run through this with us?
Okay, I just wanted to give everybody, an easy way to find the website. It's centerforknitandcrochet.org. And you can see that our mission is preserving and promoting art, craft, scholarship, and history of knitting and crochet. I did want to give you the link to the digital collections. And as we went through earlier in the presentation, we talked about how CKC is providing a gateway to these multi-source collections. They come from many institutions via Digital Public Library of America. We're also building the CKC Community Collection, and we will have some new and future exclusive collections. We're collaborating with individual collectors and hopefully in the future, historical societies and museums with small collections and even individuals with larger collections. This is just an example of the type of information that you can find in the Gateway to Library and Museums collection. This is a beautiful carte de visite showing the abolitionist Sojourner Truth in 1864 knitting and it's available through the New York Public Library digital collections. So you can find items like this when you're searching in the library and museums collections. This is something that is in the Center for Knit and Crochet's community collection. It is a quilt with a doily O. This is a crochet doily that forms the O. It was made by Suzanne Thompson in 2019, and I thought it was topically appropriate since we're heading toward our election season. I always love to share this around this time. And it encourages everyone to register to vote. This is a new collection that we will have available in November of 2024. It will be one of the first examples of a private collector's collection. The collector is Maria C. Vallejo, and the pieces in the collection have been photographed by George Linonen. It's a very special collection by a woman who absolutely loves lace. It includes knitting, crochet, and some other types of techniques, including bobbin lace, some embroidery, etc. And this is just somebody who absolutely loved lace. She received pieces from her family, but she also just picked up things in thrift stores and in estate sales that appealed to her. Many collectors are just everyday people like you and me, and we have these resources that it would be lovely to share with the public. It would create a more robust history of our crafts if people shared the things that were in their private collections. And I think one of the things that's true about museum collections is it's not necessarily a knitted or crocheted item in a museum might be a very rarefied object, but it might not be a very rarefied object because sometimes collections came in, a family, might have had several items that the museum wanted, and in addition to those items, the family donated other things. So I don't think people should feel like their items are less special because they're not in museums. We need to create a broader appreciation for the things that we all have. There's no reason why these things might not be museum worthy, whether because of their beauty, their intricacy, the special techniques that were used, or their stories. And by sharing them here, I think we develop a wider appreciation for the totality of the history of our crafts and everyone participating in it. So this will be coming soon, and we hope it will be the beginning of many more collections like this. I just wanted to say that, reiterate that we're a member organization. We're supported by memberships and donations. I'm sure you've noticed that our website is slow. It needs overhauling and updating. And to do that, we need to continue to raise money to build out and perfect and improve this resource so it really serves you and the general public. If you join, we have a bunch of benefits. We have programs. There are some exclusive patterns you can download from our store. You get a monthly newsletter. There are some member meetups, and members can volunteer and serve on CKC's board. Here are two of the free patterns that you can get. On the right is a doily that was originally designed by R.J. Dvorak. I think it was in the early part of the 20th century. The doily was redesigned and the pattern updated, and it was upsized. It was actually a very small motif originally. It's been upsized by Suzanne Thompson, who's one of CKC's board members. so that you can make it today. And another former board member did a lot of historical research on the origins of this pattern, and that's included in the pattern. And it really gives you a good idea for what type of research and craft history is available and possible to do, that we can really recover some of these items we've lost. And on the right is a Shetland style shawl designed by Denise Bartels, who's a CKC member. She's designed many shawls, and she donated this pattern to the Center for Knit and Crochet last year. So these are just two of the patterns we have available for members. We have also programs, and one program that I don't have listed here, but is called the Virtual Craft Circle. It meets monthly on the third Thursday, and we have lots of different interesting speakers, really great voices in the field of craft today. We also have this anniversary lecture series, and this will be the second in the series. CKC has some values that it's exploring in its next decade, and one of them is the association of knitting and crochet with health and wellness. So we're having Betsanne Corkle on Sunday, October 20th. Attending these programs is free to members, but if you don't want to join, you will be able to register and pay a $25 fee. That registration link should be up either today or tomorrow, so you can sign up and attend the program. And obviously, we're always grateful for donations. We are a nonprofit, so your donations would be tax deductible. And we have some upcoming exhibitions that we're trying to develop, for which your donations would be very helpful. We want to do a retrospective exhibition of Phyllis Bell Miller's knitwear designs, and we are working on that. We also have another private collector who has a collection of beaded bags and coverlets, and that will be the next collection that we put up. So
Fantastic.
we're on social media on all these resources. You can go to CKC's social media page and just click on that, and it will take you to our various social media outlets. And just again, the membership link, and also our website.
So those links are not hot, but I will recreate them in the show notes for this program.
Great.
So that they will be clickable if you go down there.
Excellent.
As Jennifer mentioned, the site is a little bit slow and they're working on it, but of course, everybody knows that having a few extra nickels in their pocket will help them to improve that and other things about the site. So I will be donating when we get off this chat.
Thank you. We
and I will
appreciate it.
also put Aunt Matilda's sequin dress up there. And Jennifer was explaining to me that the more people use the site and post there, the better it's going to be for every aspect of the site. So
yes, we're very interested in your comments and suggestions for improvement, because we want to build a system that the knitting and crochet community will be excited about using. And if we don't hear from you about what features would make it useful and fun for you to use, we can't continue to improve the resource in a way that will be really meaningful. So the more people who use it and, even complain or explain, what it is that would be preferable, the better information we have to continue to develop the resource appropriately. And we are very grateful for any type of feedback. So if you can use it and tell us about your experiences, we would really appreciate that.
well, I think that's really noble of you, which brings me to one last thing, which is if we're going to do a drawing for one of the tote bags, maybe we can make that a condition that people have to comment here with any suggestions or comments that they have. And then
Yes, I
do
mean,
a drawing from that.
if you have a system that you would like to use to encourage some engagement, and we can do a drawing for one of CKC's tote bags, for anyone who, you know, if you have a drawing of a way for people to comment or give suggestions, we're happy to do that.
Yes, I mean, this will be on YouTube and there'll be a place for comments. So
Excellent.
Subscribe to this channel, comment below, comments about this program, comments about CKC's website, suggestions that you may have. Maybe you know of collectors who you want to propose to them. I mean, any kind of comment here will get you into the drawing. Do you have a tote bag to show, or should I show the one that I have?
Oh, if you would show yours, that would be great.
Okay, let me
I
untether
don't
from-
have one up here.
Let me untether from my microphone 1 second. So it's not just a tote bag. It can also be worn as a backpack.
Correct.
And it has drawstring, so you can, you can
Cinch it up. Yep.
it closed a little bit more. And it's canvas. It's a pretty heavy duty canvas, so it will easily hold a sweater's weight of yarn.
Yes.
So if you're going to Rhinebeck or any local festivals, this will be a great thing to put your purchases in. My light just died. I think that's a signal that we should wrap it up.
Okay.
But this has been just fantastic. I'm so glad. I mean, even though I waited a long time to get you on the show, I'm really glad that you walked us through some of the features. I was really interested in seeing how you can use it, and it's a little intimidating. So I think this was really, really greatly beneficial. Thank you so much. Thanks.
You're very
for being here,
welcome. Thank
Jennifer.
you very much for giving us the opportunity to speak to your audience about this resource. We really hope that people will use it and obviously give us comments that will help us to keep improving it. Thank you very much, Billie.
Oh, you're very, very welcome. My pleasure.
All right. Thanks.